To the students, he was a ghost, a whisper in the hallways of Blackwood University's colossal library. Because he seemed to fear noise more than anything, they called him Mister. Shh, behind his back. They had no idea that this unassuming man had spent his career in the loudest places in the world, and that his silence wasn't a weakness, it was a weapon. This was a lesson one arrogant student was about to learn the hard way. Welcome to the unspoken chapter. Before we turn the page on this story of quiet dignity and hidden strength, let us know in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe the most important stories are the ones that are never told, hit that subscribe button and help us give a voice to the silent heroes all around us. Arthur Sterling's world was built on oak shelves, the scent of faded ink, and a respectful silence. For 40 years, he had worked in this sacred temple of silence at Blackwood University. His movements were measured, his voice rarely heard, and his presence almost imperceptible. He was the shadow between the stacks. His daily routine was as flawless as the mechanism of a clock. He would enter at 8 sharp, hang his coat, and before sitting at his desk, gauge the building's atmosphere like a barometer. His job wasn't just to catalog books. He was an invisible guardian, maintaining the equilibrium of this building. The students either never noticed him or saw him as a piece of moving furniture. This wasn't a problem for him. He wasn't there to be recognized or appreciated. He was a servant of knowledge and silence. For some, however, this tranquility was an invitation for the arrogant, and Julian Thorne was one of them. Julian was a third-generation Blackwood student who wore the weight of his surname like a cloak, accustomed to getting everything he wanted. His father was one of the university's biggest donors, a fact Julian used as a trump card in every interaction. For him, rules were annoying details for ordinary people. The library was merely a social venue where he could make phone calls, impress his friends, and test how far he could bend the rules. Julian's presence was like a rock thrown into a calm lake. He would speak loudly in silent study areas and never mute his phone. When junior staff warned him, he would shut them down by saying, "You wouldn't want me to call my father, would you?" Arthur had been observing Julian for months, seeing him not as a threat, but as an anomaly that needed to be corrected. Whenever Julian broke the rules, Arthur would silently appear beside him and say in a barely audible voice, "Please respect the right of other students to study, Mr. Thorne." His voice was so low it sounded more like a request than a warning. Julian, in turn, would turn this into a power play, looking down on Arthur with a mocking smile. "Of course, Mr. Shh, whatever you say." For Julian, this was proof that the old man was scared and weak. He didn't yet know how wrong he was. A week before final exams, the tension in the library was at its peak. Julian and his friends had taken over the largest table in the great reading hall. Instead of studying, they were watching a game on their laptops, their whispers turning into laughter. Finally, a young girl sitting alone gathered her courage and walked over. "Excuse me," she said in a trembling voice. "Could you be a little quieter?" Julian gave the girl a condescending look. "Sorry, sweetie," he said. "If you don't like it, you can try the tables in the basement." The girl's face turned beet red, and she returned to her seat. It was at that moment that Arthur made his move. He gently placed an 18th century volume onto his cart and slowly walked towards Julian's table. "Mr. Thorne," Arthur said, his voice as calm as ever, "if I may invite you and your friends to the cafe outside, I believe it would be more productive for everyone." Julian leaned back, a smug grin on his face. "You again, Mr. Shh, leave me alone, or this quiet little world of yours might come crashing down." The expression on Arthur's face did not change. "This world is not mine, Mr. Thorne. It belongs to everyone who respects knowledge, and you are currently violating that respect." For Julian, this was a challenge. He stood up, towering over Arthur. "Listen to me, old man," he hissed. If I see you around my table again, I will break every single one of your old bones." All sound in the reading hall had ceased. Everyone held their breath, expecting Arthur to back down. But he didn't. There was neither fear nor anger in his eyes, just a deep, weary tranquility. Julian was infuriated by Arthur's lack of reaction. "Did you hear me?" he shouted. Arthur replied calmly, "Your voice is quite clear, Mr. Thorne. I just don't believe my answer holds any importance." This was the last straw. He angrily grabbed the collar of Arthur's cardigan. "I'll show you what's important right now," he roared, and attempted to shove the old man backward. It was in that moment that time slowed down. What happened next was faster than the blink of an eye. The instant Julian's hand touched Arthur's collar, Arthur's body moved with Julian's force, not against it, like a willow branch. He used Julian's forward momentum to his own advantage. His right hand, with a motion as soft as wiping dust from the air, grasped Julian's wrist. His thumb pressed on a nerve point on the inside of the wrist. Simultaneously, Arthur took a small step, entering Julian's center of gravity. His left hand placed just below Julian's elbow. It wasn't a push or a pull. It was a precise movement that manipulated the body's mechanics, like opening a lock. The angry expression on Julian's face turned into a momentary confusion, then into a pained disbelief. What he felt in his arm was an electric shock. He had suddenly lost control, his strength draining away as if someone had turned off a faucet. His knees buckled. Arthur didn't push Julian. He simply let go. Julian's own weight and momentum were enough to make him collapse to the ground. It was all over in 3 seconds. Arthur Sterling straightened up as if nothing had happened, adjusting his cardigan. Everyone in the hall was frozen, staring in disbelief. The man they called Mr. Shh had taken down the most feared bully on campus with a single touch. It was in the midst of this chaos that something slipped from the inner pocket of Arthur's old jacket and fell to the floor. No one noticed, except for Sarah, a history student in the front row. Arthur, after a final glance at Julian's prone form, walked towards his book cart. But Sarah's eyes were fixed on the small object under the table. It was an old leather wallet, and a card was sticking out from its worn edges. She bent down and picked it up, intending to return it. But when she held it, she saw the text on the old, laminated card. In the photo was a 30-something Arthur Sterling with a stern look. Below the photo were 3 words: Central Intelligence Agency, Field Operative. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She looked up and watched the old man slowly disappearing between the stacks. He wasn't a ghost. He was the one who hunted ghosts. Campus security arrived within 5 minutes. The chief, Mike, a burly ex-cop, found a bizarre scene. "What's going on here?" he asked. Everyone started talking at once. Mike turned to Arthur. "Mr. Sterling, do you have an explanation?" Arthur turned from the shelf. "Mr. Thorne lost his balance," he said calmly. "I believe he needs some rest." This answer was so absurd that Mike didn't know what to say. Just then, Sarah came forward with the wallet. I think this belongs to Mr. Sterling," she whispered, handing it to Mike. Mike took the wallet and saw the exposed ID card. He frowned. CIA? What is this? Some kind of joke? He held the card out to Arthur. Arthur slowly nodded. "An old memento," he said. "It was a long time ago." The incident quickly reached Dean Albright's ears, who summoned Arthur to his office. "Arthur," the dean said, pointing to the ID card, "the Thorns are going to cause a huge problem. His father is threatening to pull his donations. Give me something to work with. Is this a joke?" Arthur didn't answer. He just waited. In desperation, Dean Albright decided to play his last card. He called General Augustus Kane, a retired 4-star general on the university's board of trustees. The dean explained the situation, ending with, One of our librarians, a man named Arthur Sterling, is carrying an old CIA ID. It's probably a fake, but he put the Thorn kid in the hospital. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then General Kane's voice came through, lower and more serious than usual. "Repeat that name for me," the general said. "Arthur Sterling." Another silence. Then the general said, "Dean, listen to me very carefully. That ID is not fake. You will immediately expel Julian Thorn from the school. And tell his father that if he causes one more problem, he might lose not just his donations, but his entire company. And to Arthur Sterling, convey my deepest respects. And never interfere with his business again. That man has paid more for this university than all of us combined could ever afford. Understood?" Dean Albright was dumbfounded. Understood, General." He looked at the calm man sitting opposite him. The man he thought he had known for 40 years was, in fact, a stranger. The next day, the news spread that Julian Thorn had been indefinitely suspended for personal reasons. Arthur Sterling was back at his post at 8 sharp, but nothing was the same. The nickname Mr. Shh vanished overnight. In its place, an aura of respect and curiosity formed. When he walked down the hallways, students would make way for him, greeting him in whispers. His silence was no longer a weakness, but a symbol of strength carrying the weight of an unknown past. Sarah often watched Arthur from a distance, now seeing a different meaning in his precise movements. The calmness of an expert diffusing a bomb, the focus of an analyst cracking a code. One afternoon, she gathered her courage and approached his desk. "I just wanted to—" "Thank you," Sarah whispered. Arthur smiled slightly, the first smile Sarah had ever seen on his face. "Protecting the silence is my job, young lady," he said. "It always has been." Arthur Sterling continued to work in that library for another 10 years until he retired. No one ever learned his full story. Was he a legend from Langley? A shadow from the Cold War? These questions remained unanswered, because some stories are not written in books. They are lived by heroes hidden behind a quiet life. And only those who pay attention can see how loud a past that silence conceals. Everyone at Blackwood University learned an important lesson that day. True strength didn't come from shouting. It revealed itself when you didn't have to prove anything to anyone, when your silence alone was enough to fill a room. So now I ask you, have you ever had an Arthur Sterling in your life? Have you ever met someone who seemed quiet and modest, but contained worlds within them? Share their stories, their names, in the comments. Because these silent heroes don't expect applause, but they deserve to be remembered. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share. Join us to remember the forgotten and to make the voice of silence heard. See you in the next story. And remember, the next time you walk into a library, show twice as much respect to the quietest person there. They may be veterans of wars you've never heard of,